Um,
Okay, so let's begin our seventh Shiur. I believe it's number 7 of Megillat Esther, and I wanted to welcome everybody and to thank everybody for their mazel tovs, refuah shalemas, and all their brachas that we spoke about earlier before the recording. And we're going to get started. You'll be happy to know that next week, hopefully, I will not have 2 pairs of glasses on. I am going to have 1 pair that combine the 2, so I won't look so strange. Okay, so last week we talked about King Ahasuerus appointing Haman as the number 2 guy, and we really came to the point where Mordecai is not bowing down to Haman. And the question that begs to be asked is, why does Mordecai not bow down? Could everyone mute themselves, please? Thank you. Why doesn't Mordecai bow down to Haman? It's not as if he probably bows to the king. He probably, there's no reason that he can't do a bow out of respect. And it says that we're in the Torah, we're not allowed to bow down to idols. Now, we have to wonder what was on Mordecai's mind. We read about this. There's some noise in someone's house. Could you please mute the? Could you please mute yourself?
you might have to do it, Rhonda.
Okay. Okay. So what we read in the text is that the servants who are all the servants around the palace bow down to Haman, and they certainly notice that Mordecai does not. And the king has commanded that everybody bow down. Now they repeat their question over.
Rhonda, where are we in the Megillah?
We're in chapter 3, Pasuk. Let's see, Pasuk. I would say 2. 2 or 3. Let's 3. And the servants asked Mordecai, why don't you bow down to Haman? And Mordecai says that he's not going to bow down because he's a Jew. That's his reason. So
was it that Haman was wearing something that seemed to be an idol?
Well, that's what the Mefarshim seem to think, that there was some other reason. So let's take a look at the situation. Could everyone please, I don't know how to do this to mute everyone, but I would really appreciate if there's anyone else in your home, please mute yourself. It's very hard to talk over the noise. So the servants repeat the question over and over, and they suggest that Mordecai bow down if he knows what's good for him. It's very obvious that everyone is bowing down except Mordecai, and that he actually risks his job and his life if he doesn't bow down. So he continues to say that he will not bow down because he is a Jew. Now, why does Mordecai feel it's okay to reveal that he's a Jew, but he tells Esther not to reveal that she's a Jew? We will get to that question at some point, but right now we're dealing with Mordecai. So finally, the servants, after telling Mordecai that he should bow down, they go and tell Haman. Why they do that, I don't know, but they go and tell him, and clearly Haman does not even know that Mordecai is not bowing down until it's brought to his attention. Maybe he doesn't see it. Maybe he's so elated that everyone is bowing down to him that he doesn't see everybody who's in the area that he's walking through. But now that it's been pointed out to him, he searches out Mordecai, and he wants to know, he is enraged that Mordecai is not bowing down to him. Now, this is not the first time we've heard that someone is enraged. The king was enraged when Vashti would not appear before him. And now we hear that Haman is enraged because he is not having, because Mordecai is not bowing down to him. He's so angry and he's so filled with hatred because clearly Mordecai says, I am not going to bow down, I'm a Jew. So Haman is so upset with this that it would not satisfy him just to have Mordecai killed. It's not going to satisfy this anger. So Haman feels that by just killing one Jew is not satisfactory. He's going to kill all the Jews, and perhaps that will ease his rage. He's going to annihilate an entire people because one person is not doing what he wants. And it's clearly an act of, anti-Semitism. It is because Mordecai is a Jew. So it is with this idea he has this idea for a decree that he needs to send out to kill all the Jews, that Haman gives voice to his ancestors, his ancestors' hatred, and he passes on the grudge of the father to the sons, because we know that, where is he from? He is Haman the Agagite.
Amalek.
He's from Amalek. And so he has this grudge that he must have been brought up with, he has learned about, and but he didn't remember the mercy of Saul, because it was through that pity of Saul's for Agag that he, the enemy, was born. So he doesn't remember that. All he remembers is the hatred that he has. So in Megillat Esther, Mordecai, a Benjamite, descendant of Kish, a Benjamite, and Saul was also the son of Kish, a different Kish, battles Haman. So it's a battle now, what we see of Mordecai the Benjamite, and Saul, back then it was King Saul the Benjamite, fighting Haman the Agagite Amalek, who represents King Agag the Amalekite. So we have this battle between the two that still rages on from years and years past. And it becomes like round two of this ancient battle between Israel and Amalek. So the response, yes.
And how long of a period was that from the time that that he didn't bow down to him until he started to act on his feelings?
Not long, not long at all. I mean, it must have been like days or maybe a week or
So
so.
he reacted right away.
Yeah, it's not a long time. It's not like years. So these did someone else have something to say? These could be the reasons that Mordecai doesn't bow. They could be personal rivalry between Haman and Mordecai. And don't forget, Mordecai saves the king's life, and in the next breath, the king appoints Haman as the number 2 guy. Maybe Mordecai felt, gee, I should have been selected for that position. The second reason for Mordecai possibly not bowing are religious motives having to do with idolatry. And this is what Dorothy said, that Haman, it said that Haman wore some kind of an idol on around his neck. And most of the Meforshim who say that the not bowing is for religious reasons are medieval commentators like Rashi, etc. And they get this thought from why Mordecai doesn't bow down, from people during that time wearing crucifixes. And so the medieval Mefarshim say, well, maybe he didn't bow down because Haman wore some kind of an emblem or a symbol or a little idol around his neck. Now, the third reason is that it could be an ethnic motivation in which a proud Jew would never bow down to an Amalekite. So here we have the conflict between a Jew and Amalek, and so that could be for ethnic reasons. And this opinion is more the Talmudic rabbinic viewpoint that's discussed in the Talmud. So these three reasons all sound very plausible, but we don't know which reason Mordecai is employing. But but the only reason we are told is that Mordecai says that he is a Jew and he's not bowing down. So it seems that Haman also attributes Mordecai's refusal to bow down as to his Jewishness. So both of them attribute this non-bowing issue to Mordecai as being Jewish. And so Haman sees this as something that all the Jews would probably do to him, and therefore he is quite upset. So what I'd like to do is, this is where we kind of left off last week in the text. Becky, how about if we have you read Pasuk 7
I'd prefer not to read, Rhonda, because I have a cough and I could start coughing and it won't stop.
Oh, oh,
Sorry.
okay,
Catch me next week after the full load of antibiotic is gone.
okay, fine. Do I have a volunteer, Rose or, anybody?
I can read.
Okay.
Where, are we at line
Pasuk
5?
7, chapter 3.
7. In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, that is the lot, was cast in the presence of Haman from day to day and from month to month to the 12th month, which is the month of Adar.
Okay,
Continue.
let's stop there for a moment. In Pasuk 7, the narrator of Megillat takes us from the decision of not annihilating the Jews to selecting the date in which the Jews will be destroyed. And it seems to us, it would seem to a reader who doesn't know the text, isn't this strange that that Haman would pick a date to kill the Jews before he even discussed this with the king? You would think he would go to the king first, say, look, there's this problem, I have this problem, do I have your permission? The king might say yay, nay, and then the next thing we know, he would pick a date. But no, Haman is so sure that this is going to happen that he goes to where they throw these cubes that had astrological and Zoroastrian kind of images, that people would roll these kind of like dice to choose dates in which to do things, that it was a good time to do it, it was a bad time to do something. And so these were dice of chance, and they were used to select all kinds of times for different events or different things that would happen in a person's life. So, and as we know, these dice are called pur. Purim is the plural, so they throw multiple dice to get the month and the day. So, the casting of the lots, the casting of the lots was in the 12th year of Ahasuerus's reign, and it determined when the Jews would be killed. But again, it just seems so much out of order that the king is not consulted. So we go to Pasuk 8. Cynthia, can you read for us?
I'm afraid I don't have a text that runs straight. It's got a lot of hesber between the texts, so I prefer not.
Okay.
And Rhonda,
Okay.
Rhonda,
Yes.
I don't think it's strange that Haman assumed all that responsibility. His ego was definitely flattered by the king a short while before. And as far as he was concerned, all the servants and all the officers were under his tutelage, and he was going to do whatever the hell he wanted to do.
You're right. You're right. So will you read for us?
You want me to read?
Yeah. Pasuk 8.
Then Haman said to Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your realm. Their laws are different from every other people's, and they do not observe the king's laws. Therefore, it is not befitting the king to tolerate them. Continue.
Yep.
If it pleases the king, let it be recorded that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 silver talents into the hands of those who perform the duties for deposit into the king's treasuries. So the king removed his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, son of Hamdan the Agagite, enemy of the Jews. Then the
Okay,
king,
all right. Okay,
try
so
some water.
I have, thanks. All right, so what do we have here in Pasuk 8, 9? We have the fact that Haman does go to the king. He already knows the date he wants to annihilate
Okay, not everybody is shut off. Come on, people.
Rhonda,
Yeah.
it's Adele here. On my screen, I can see everybody. And on the lower left-hand side, everyone who is on mute has a little microphone with a red line through it. And the ones that I can see that don't have that, besides you, because you shouldn't be muted, are Lori and Linda and Rose. And if you go to that screen, you'll see all of us together. And so if Lori and Linda, and now Rose is okay, Lori and Linda could just check and see if muted, because they don't have that little icon. Could be
Okay.
wrong, and that's how you tell if someone's, can you see that? Can you see all of us?
I can't, because I
And
have other
Linda-
things on the screen.
Okay, I have everybody.
can't.
Linda, are you muted? Because you don't have
No,
that
I
little
don't know
icon.
if I can mute this.
You just go to the top
No.
and touch, and it says mute, and then you go to the top, touch something, and all the icons.
Okay, thank you.
She's done. Okay.
Okay, so,
No, Dorothy's not muted either.
okay,
I
I'm
just
sorry.
unmuted to see if I could help.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now that the king has been alerted to the situation, we have to ask ourselves, first of all, what did Haman just say? What did he just say to the king?
He just bribed him. He gave him money.
Okay, you could say it was a bribe, all right. But also he says, there's a people. There's a what people? He doesn't identify it. There's a people scattered all over your kingdom. He doesn't identify them. Sure, there's 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia and everything in between. Of course, there's a people scattered throughout your kingdom. Who? What people? Who? Who are these people? They're not identified. Number two, he says their laws are different from everyone else. You don't think the laws in India are different from the laws in Ethiopia? You don't think the laws in Babylon are different than the laws in Egypt? Of course they are. So those two reasons are irrelevant. They have absolutely no meaning whatsoever. Number three, he says they do not observe the king's laws. The conclusion is that Haman comes to after these 3 points is to single a group out that must be destroyed, and that we now learn that the only reason that he can think of is that they don't observe the king's laws. Now, who says they don't observe the king's laws? Did he give examples that people, the governors of all the provinces have been having a problem, and consequently they have their jails full of criminals who haven't observed the laws? Absolutely not. So what is Haman talking about? What we find here is that he is so random and obscure in what he tells the king that the king possibly doesn't even know or isn't even listening to what he has to say. All the king knows is that Haman will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the coffers of the king, who will then in turn pay for those who are going to remove or deal with this people. King doesn't even know who they are, doesn't even know how they're going to be destroyed. Maybe he says, well, if they're the king feels that if they're not obeying our laws, then maybe they just need to be taught a lesson in the laws of Persia. He has no idea what Haman is talking about.
But
Now-
perhaps it's important that he's not told, because
Rhonda?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Zamira, sorry. In the side notes in my book here from the Talmud, it says, Haman said, they eat and drink and despise the throne. For if a fly falls into a Jew's cup, he throws out the fly and drinks the wine. But if your majesty were to merely touch his cup, he would throw it to the ground and not drink from it.
Right, that's midrash. Okay.
Yeah, it
So-
says here, Tom.
Right, so that's midrash, and that that is what maybe some of the Talmudic scholars say, that this is an example of what these people do, but it's not in the text. So it's not brought to the king, and the king has no idea what he's talking about. And we know that nowhere does Haman mention who these people are. That
and I
point,
was going to say that there is a good reason for him to mention that and not to mention who these people are. Because if you give them a name, and I'm sure that the king knows who the Jews are, they're probably benefactors of the king, and they probably have had quite a bit of influence in the community. So if he knows, then perhaps he might be a bit partial to them. I think the reason he didn't tell the king is because he wants to tell the king that there is this group who are not really like us. They're, like, they're not human like us, they're not like us, they're different.
right,
And therefore we can dispense with them.
right. Well,
Rhonda,
yes,
I've got a very interesting, if it is midrash, I don't know, and it says the fact that Haman had to tell Ahasuerus about the Jews indicates that the king knew very little about them. Although the Jews were his subjects and they even had a small state of their own in the area surrounding Jerusalem,
wait a minute. We can't hear you, Cynthia.
the 120, you hear me now?
Yeah.
The 127 provinces over which he reigned, some of which were very large and important, contained many peoples and tribes. Even if Ahasuerus had been a conscientious and organized ruler, he would not have been intimately familiar.
You got muted again.
Yeah, you
Sorry.
go in and out. But you're right, that's right.
No, I want to get to the point that they're saying, however, it is known that Ahasuerus received a letter from the Samaritans libeling the exiles who had returned to the land of Israel.
Right.
They're quoting Ezra, and therefore it is likely that Haman's comments evoked his existing negative associations, making him receptive to the idea of destruction.
Right. So don't forget that those Samaritans, with the help of Haman's sons, were the ones who wrote to King Ahasuerus saying, don't let the Jews complete the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the temple, because once they have their temple, they'll stop paying taxes. And so consequently, Ahasuerus knows who the Jews are. His astrologers had all at the very beginning of his reign said that there will be a Jew who will be sitting on the throne. He didn't know he was going to marry a Jew and his son would be Jewish. He had no idea. And he still doesn't know that Esther is a Jew. So at this point, all he knows is that he's into his 12th year of his reign, that the Jews are not rebuilding Jerusalem and certainly not misbehaving down there in Israel. And he also knows that there's no one who's going to take over his throne, because he feels that after the 70-year exile, all of that Jewish stuff that was going on at the beginning of his reign is now possibly over. So the Jews are not on his radar screen at this particular point. And now he still doesn't know that this people are the Jews, because Haman doesn't even mention it. And in addition, Haman does not mention who is going to do this dirty deed of annihilating the people. All the king knows is that Haman is going to put a bunch of money into his coffers, which is more than enough to pay for annihilating a people, because it says in the decree, and we're going to read that, that the people can go out and kill the Jews, and the people can loot. We know from a midrash that it says that Haman was hoping that the looting that he would have his men do would more than make up the 10,000 talents of silver to give to the king. We don't know for a fact how wealthy Haman was, but somehow he felt this huge sum would be replenished somehow, and it would be given to the king. So let's read exactly what the decree says. Okay.
Rhonda, can I just mention something?
Sure.
It seems to me that Achashverosh is not a very intelligent person. The fact that he's not questioning, like, well, give me more information. Who are you talking about? I mean, all these things that somebody with some intelligence would say, wait a minute, I want more information about these people, and what exactly aren't they doing? Does this mean that he's not very bright, or is he so trusting, that he just gives all this power up?
I think Xenia, I think he's very hedonistic.
Mhm.
And, he's self-centered, and he appointed this man and said, like, Dayenu, you do, go for Dre thy negative, do whatever you want. And he doesn't really want to be bothered.
Go ahead.
And Haman is a bulldozer. I mean, he literally is bulldozing the king. He just doesn't even give him a chance to contribute anything to it. This is it. This is done. This is what we're going to do. Blah, 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 blah.
Haman is actually telling the king what's going to happen.
Yeah.
He's not asking, he's telling. So this is we're going to see that the king wakes up. The king, first of all, if we take into consideration what's happening in the world at large, the king is often very busy fighting the Greeks. The Greeks are knocking at their door to take over the Persian Empire. So the king is very much involved with protecting his empire. Now, that's also a reason he may have taken on a second man in control here, because he says, you deal with the internal affairs. I'll take care of protecting my empire, the external affairs. Because if we were to expand our learning into more of a worldwide view, we would be bringing in Greek history as well and other things. But I'm trying to keep it into just Megillat Esther at this point. But keep in mind, Ahasuerus is keeping his empire together, and the only thing that struck him possibly was to hear that there was a people that weren't behaving themselves, and and the fact that he was going to get some money, but Ahasuerus was very, very wealthy. This could have been a drop in the bucket. It may not have had any significance. We don't even know if he was listening, basically, you know. He may very easily, here's Haman again. Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah, here's my ring. Just go do what you want. He may not. Did he hear when the servant said Mordecai saved his life? Do we have a reaction from the king at that particular time that Esther told the servant and the servant tells the king? We don't have a reaction then either from the king. So we're not sure exactly what the king hears and what he doesn't hear, but we do find out later on in the story what he does react to, and we're going to find that out. So here in, let's see, Pasuk, let's go to Pasuk 11. Do I have someone, Xenia, you want to read?
Sure, okay. And the king said, the money and the people are yours to do with as you see fit. On the 13th day of the first month, the king's scribes were summoned and a decree was issued as Haman directed to the king's satraps, to the governors of every province and to the officials of every people, to every province in its own script and to every people in its own language. The orders were issued in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed with the king's signet. Accordingly, written instructions were dispatched by couriers to all the king's provinces to destroy, massacre, and exterminate all the Jews, young and old, children and women, on a single day on the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions. The text of the document was to the effect that a law should be proclaimed in every single province. It was to be publicly displayed to all the peoples so that they might be ready for that day. The couriers went out post haste on the royal mission, and the decree was proclaimed in the fortress Shushan. The king and Haman sat down to feast, but the city of Shushan was dumbfounded.
Okay, so we get the whole decree right here. We get exactly what Haman dictates to all the scribes of the different languages, and we find out that when Haman talks to the king, he doesn't say annihilate, massacre, and destroy. He just says they're this people that need to be just, destroyed. But you can destroy a people without massacring them and annihilating them. You can destroy their income, you can destroy their homes, you can destroy, the community. There can be a lot of different reasons to what to do with and destroy. But what we're talking about now is that Haman is explicit, and there is no doubt that the Jews are to be killed, physically killed, and their possessions to be plundered. He is fully giving permission to everybody to take whatever they want that belongs to the Jews. So he, by dictating this to the scribes and sending it out immediately, he is not wasting any time. He is hell-bent on getting this out so that that everyone will know that this is going to be happening. Now, what do you think is going on in his mind about, it's a year. The people have a year, the Jews have a year before they're going to be killed. The people who are reading this or having it read to them by the governors, they're going to post it on every, a public place. What do you think is going on in these people's heads? Does anyone have a thought about what this, all of a sudden at the mall in Modi'in, you read the Jews are going to be destroyed a year from now. What are you thinking?
That's why it says that they're perplexed, because they don't understand all this.
Okay, go
Well,
ahead.
maybe it was going to give them time to repent,
Okay,
because they were not the best Jews. They were sinning.
okay.
Do you think he was trying to give them time to leave as well?
No, I don't think it was time. I don't think he thought they were going to leave. That's one thing. I don't believe that they were going to pick up and leave. They didn't pick up and leave 12 years prior. Why, when 15 years prior, when Cyrus the Great said, go home, they didn't pick up to go. They had permission to go. So they're not picking up now.
They'll go in mourning.
Okay, so it is specifically, the decree says specifically that it was translated into every language so that there would be no doubt that
Somebody's got their
hold on.
microphone open.
Yeah, me.
That's your music, Rhonda?
Yeah.
Okay, you're allowed. You're the teacher.
I'm just, because of my daughter is going into surgery, so I don't want to. Okay, so then, so I find this very, very upsetting to know. I would find it very upsetting to know that unless I did something proactive, that in a year I might be killed. This wouldn't sit well with me, but this is the kind of personality I am. These people, the Jewish nation who are living in the Persian Empire, they're basically assimilated Jews. They are very well ensconced and entrenched in the Persian Empire. And so all of a sudden, somebody who hates them by the name of Haman is shaking the tree and saying, you think you're assimilated? You think you're part of our culture? You think you're part of our empire? Well, I'm telling you, you're not. Does that sound familiar to you?
Very familiar. It's like the Germans.
Exactly. You think you fought in the German army? You thought you flew for the German pilots? You thought you were a member of the German workmen's circle? It means nothing. You're still a Jew. Exactly. And this is the wake-up call to the Jews who are living in the Persian Empire. All right, so let's see what we can determine here is going on. First of all, it doesn't say that the king saw this decree. It doesn't say anything. It just says the king takes off his ring, gives it to Haman, and he probably says, leave me alone, go do whatever you want. It's okay. It's okay, whatever you decide to do. After he does that, after the king does that, we hear that the decree is sent out immediately and through all the provinces. So, it's going to take some time to get to some places. Other places like Shushan, which is the city that the palace is in, the capital, the people got the decree that very day. And that's why it says the people of Shushan were bewildered or perplexed or confused, whatever your text says. Mine says bewildered, because they didn't understand what was going on here. Here is a king who 9 years ago sends out a decree that everybody every man should be in charge of his own home and his own wife, which seems so absurd to the people. Like, the king has to tell me I'm the ruler of my household. And now they're getting a decree that says in a year from now, you're allowed to kill the Jews. What the bewilderment is they're not sure if this is a joke or not. They're not sure whether it's the same kind of silly decree that the king sent out before. And they're not sure if it's really a valid decree. They're not sure. Now it says in the commentary that the people of Persia, of Shushan, were delighted, and they were happy, and they were laughing, and they were ecstatic because they could kill the Jews and take their stuff. And the Jews are wailing and crying and being upset because they feel that their life is in danger. Whether that's true or not, if that's the bewilderment or the confusion that has been engendered, we are not sure. All we do know is that the king has, in the name of the king, a decree has been sent out. The next thing we hear is that Haman and the king sit down to drink. They're having a drinking party. It seems like that's all they do. This king is loving his wine, and now he's sitting there down and drinking with Haman. Now we don't know, this is after the decree has been sent out, and we don't know exactly what the king knows at this point. But again, the Meforshim say that perhaps Haman sits the king down to drink is to get him drunk enough that he doesn't even remember that he gave Haman permission to do what he wanted with the Jews, and that the next day he'll wake up and he won't even remember what happened. This is one of the Mefarshim midrash that is given over to us. So here we have confused citizens, a drunk king, a second in command person who is taking charge and doing whatever he wants. And we have a queen that's sitting in the palace who's not revealing her identity. This makes for an extremely interesting storyline. And we find that it leads us to what eventually is going to happen in this year. We have a year's window of time, and now we're going to find out what is going to occur once this decree.
And it's really perplexing to know that there is actually a king that is supposed to be the leader of his people that leaves everything to someone else, and he's just a big party animal.
Listen.
Without any responsibility.
It wouldn't be the first time, Becky.
Well, for sure. Among us as well.
All right. So Haman uses all that we see. This chapter 3 gives us the opportunity to see the personality of Haman. We see what gets him angry. We see that he's a Jew hater from day one. We see that he uses ambiguity in his words to the king of what he wants to do. And he doesn't give the king a full picture. And what he's doing actually is a kind of a double speak. You know, he's saying one thing and doing another. It's very interesting. I read that it is as if Haman, from behind his mask, does not want the king to take an active role in the genocide. And that's an interesting quote that someone writes about behind the mask. It is through this doublespeak and ambiguity that Haman dupes the king in supporting his plan of genocide. So I thought that was a very interesting that the person uses that he dupes the king. He does everything possible to be so vague that the king doesn't even know what's going on. And then I found this, there's this wonderful quote: "A man only sees what is visible, but God sees into the heart, even if the heart is Achashverosh, and influences it." In Mishlei 21, quote, "Like channeled water is the mind of the king in the Lord's hand. He directs it to whatever he wishes." This is a perfect quote to kind of characterize Achashverosh, like channeled water, you know, in the mind is the mind of the king. This is what Haman is doing. He's channeling Achashverosh's mind, just like you can channel water. But in God's hands, God is the only one who directs it to whatever he wishes. This is also significant because Haman thinks he's directing one thing, and God knows he's directing something else. So that is very clear from what is happening at this point. And now we go forward to see who the channeler is. Is it Haman who's going to come out on top, or is it God who's going to come out on top? And that's where we leave it until next week, and we see what happens as we see what the players now will do.
Rhonda, who was the king just before Achashverosh? Do we know that?
Yeah, it was Cyrus the Great.
Oh, immediately.
Mhm.
Ah,
If we go according to the Jewish count, the Jewish timeline, and that's what we're doing now. If we don't, if we go through the secular timeline, there were several Xerxes and Artaxerxes before King Achashverosh.
so was Achashverosh in line to be the king?
Not, according to some people, he was the son of Cyrus the Great. According to some, he was not the son of anybody in particular, and that he took the throne himself. So it's a little questionable which is the right answer.
Cyrus the Great, what made him great?
He conquered the Babylonian Empire. And then it was and he creates the Persian Empire.
Just with what we know about Achashverosh, it just occurred to me, how did he get to, I mean, no matter what kind of person he was, if he was destined to be the king, then he would be the king, whether he was thought to be good or not.
Right. I think we discussed this maybe in the first or second lesson. You're more than welcome to review that on the YouTube.
Okay.
Okay. So
Was Ahasuerus actually